Jen.
Long time no see.
Long time no see. It's been so long. It's been about 5 seconds was we've spoken and about 12 hours since we've seen each other.
Which sounds about right, you know?
It does
I'm
sound
wearing
about right.
I'm wearing the same shirt I wore yesterday.
I just want everyone to know what we did last night. Can I tell everyone?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
So last night we had an event, and it also happens to be, I don't know when the hell this is being, published, but it happened to be the night of the debate. And we're like, oh, let's go to a bar and watch the debate. This will be fun. And I was like, oh, but you want to be aware of what bar you go to. And so you Googled bar watch debate like Harris supporters or something like that. And we ended up at a a watch party, this random bar. And we were probably the only people like maybe under 50 there.
Yeah.
And somebody walked up to us just like, oh, so glad you guys came. So glad you showed up for this. And we think they maybe our egos want to believe they thought we were college students.
That's what I'm going to go with. I also, one of our offices is in Westchester, which is also a college town. If you don't know what Westchester is, there's Westchester
Pennsylvania
University.
Yeah.
So there's Westchester University. So when you're in a college town and you go to a bar, they typically card you at the door. And unfortunately, my wallet was stolen on Friday at a bar in Philly. And so I was really concerned that they were going to turn me away because they thought I was under 21. And Emily was like, listen, you don't
and did they
under 21.
And did they
like, what are you talking about? I would say originally he was like, I have to get my manager. And then eventually, as we started being annoying, he was like, actually, you guys could just go in. You old bitches.
And I'm not going to say that you don't look young. I'm just going to say they see actual college students every day.
Well, now that we are older, just a little older, when I see college students, I'm like, oh yeah, I don't look 21.
That's things like this dude's a bouncer at a bar that is a college town. Like he sees 21-year-olds every single day.
Yeah. Yeah.
So he might be able to kind of pick it out.
That's fair.
Right?
So he let us in. Moral of the story is I got in.
The moral of the story is you got into a bar with no ID. Congratulations. And so we watched this, we watched the debate, and it ended up being a great night. But it was very funny that apparently if you can Google anything, you can end up at a free party.
With free food.
There was free food. It was a bar. It was great.
But let me tell you, I did not get a lot of sleep last night because of it.
Because we were out late.
We were out late, and then I had to drive home.
And
then,
I didn't get a lot of sleep last night. My stomach hurt from the food we ate.
Yeah, I can understand why.
Because we ordered 50 different things that were fried. Is that why?
That could be it.
It was like, I'll eat an entire order of mozzarella sticks, and I'm going to be like, why does my stomach hurt? That's crazy.
Weird. Why?
It must be from the 2 beers I drank.
Right.
Probably not.
Well, anyway, what a night.
What a night. So here we are. And it's funny, it gets off of after the debate to have a conversation like this, right? Because today's episode is what it actually looks like to respond and not react.
The debate was a perfect
example.
Juxtaposition of
responding versus reacting,
versus reacting. Yes.
And so we're going to talk about it. But before we get into that, Jen, listener Joelle wants to know, if you could tell your pet one thing and be certain they understood you, what would it be?
This is maybe my favorite question that's ever come in.
I did same.
And I really thought about this because I read this before we got on. My first thought, if it was only one thing, it would be to tell them that like when I leave, I'm coming back.
Yes.
Because when you leave and they look at you like you're never coming back.
Yeah.
I just want them to know I'm going to be back.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's to like help them with their anxiety. What was yours?
Well, so that was mine. But then
Yeah.
I would also say that I have two other ones, right? Which is one is like, I love you more than you could ever know. I would
Yes.
never, ever do anything to purposely hurt you. And
Yes.
when I take you to the vet, I am not trying to kill you. I am trying to help you.
Yes. But you can only
That-
choose one.
but I
I
can
would keep,
only, the one you said was the best one. That's the one I
yeah,
think. Because
right.
when you leave the house and they are on the floor and they look at you with those eyes, I'm like, fuck.
Or even when you like, so I just wish that either of my pets had a phone and I could text them.
Oh my God. It'd be so much easier if
It
you
would be,
could text your pets
I could just
and
be
they
like,
would
hey,
read
I'll
it.
be back. I just want them to know
Or I
I'm
see this
coming.
thing and I'm out and I'm thinking of you.
Right. Thinking of you.
Always.
Constantly thinking of you. We were at an event last night too, and there was a dog there. And Emily was just trying to make eye contact with the dog the entire time.
Ingrid, the dog's name was Ingrid. It had the world's biggest snootity snouts, and I wanted to just put my hands over it and kiss it. And this was a therapy dog, so I also didn't feel like I should be aggressive with it. It wasn't a service dog; it was a therapy dog, so you could like pet it and like interact with it. But I fucking love that dog.
She goes, Ingrid is looking at me to me. And I look over at Ingrid and Ingrid is literally facing the wall. I'm like, no,
I
she's
feel like
not.
I feel like she kept looking at me and was like, "Hey, girl, like we're in this together, right?"
Like you had a
No,
special connection.
I thought so. Yeah.
I think so.
Yes. Okay. So, what it actually looks like to respond and not react. And we have talked about the concept of responding versus not reacting a lot. We call the concept of differentiation. It's really used. It's from Bowennian family therapy. And here's essentially what we're talking about. You can respond to people without it being meek or overreacting, without it being cruel or fawning, right? Both of those would be a reaction. And so when we talk about reaction, once again, we are not just talking about loud voices or cursing. We're also talking about fawning or placating we can do to someone as well. That's also a version of reaction.
Yes. And, I think so many people, and we'll get into questions, but so many people want to know, like, how do I do this? They want this like 1-2 step process. But the first thing I'm going to say before we get into it is that like this is a practice.
Yeah.
It's like something that you need to practice in order to be able to do it over and over again. And you and I talk about this all the time, constantly. We're practicing it. There are so many times where we're just still reacting.
Yeah.
We're human, like you could know every single step and, your default might be reacting. It might keep coming up. So, as we talk about this, we just want to remind you that this is 100% a practice. No matter how much you practice this, you will still be human. The goal is that when you recognize certain triggers that would typically make you react, that you can say, okay, I recognize that's a trigger. I understand the feeling that's coming up for me. What do I want to do with this? I'm making a choice about it instead of reacting to the feeling.
Yeah.
So as we get into this, we'll answer a bunch of your questions. And we'll talk to you about like what this really looks like in real time.
Yeah. So let's jump into this question. So somebody said, I have awareness around this, but I still react in the moment. Example, hanging up on my partner. So what Jen just said is so perfect, which is that like, if you are aware afterwards, like, fuck, I just reacted. Guess what a really great practice to also add in is apologizing. Hey, when I hung up earlier, I was frustrated and I reacted and we weren't able to end this with like honesty and calmness, right? And I'm sorry about that. And next time, here is what I'd like to do. So saying afterwards, what do I wish I did differently? And then how do I apply that? Because the only way you're going to learn to do better is by like learning from the times that you fuck up. And that is really, really okay. Same thing. I have awareness that I do this, but I still react to the moment. Let's say that you went like fawning and you just said yes and yes and yes and yes to everyone and agreed with something you didn't agree with. So the ability to say to yourself, wow, I really wish I spoke up the way. What do I wish I would have said? Okay, next time that comes, how could I use that voice, that bravery, and that honesty?
And this is also a perfect example of like slowing yourself down. Like if you're going to say, this is what I want to do differently next time, to look back at this pastime or pastimes that you have hung up the phone in a reactive way, I want you to ask yourself, like, what was it? What's the feeling that made you hang up? Like, what felt like it was too much for you,
Mhm.
that you could not handle it, that you had to shut the conversation down, that you needed to take control? Like, what was the feeling that was coming up? What was the trigger? The more that you can understand the things specifically that are triggering you, the more you're going to be able to pinpoint them in the moment.
Yeah.
So, was your partner saying something that like hit a nerve for you? What was that nerve that they were hitting? And is your typical response to that trigger or that activation, is it to shut someone out? Is it to walk away? Is it to shut down? Because my first thought just with this specifically is like, well, I can't deal with it, right? I can't deal with this, so I'm hanging up the phone. You could have reacted in a million different ways. You could have started screaming at your partner. You could, cry. There were so many different options, but your specific reaction was hanging up the phone. So I just wonder how that translates into other areas of your life. And what does that look like in other areas of your life? Is it that you walk away, you shut down, you say, I'm not talking about this right now? Like, what specifically is that reaction? And because my guess is that's a coping mechanism for you that maybe pops up in different areas. So the first step I would say, which is something I'm going to repeat over and over and over again, is figure out what is the trigger, like pinpoint what that is, that then moves towards that reaction. Because my guess is it comes up over and over and over again in your life. So look at that and see if you can pinpoint that, because that'll help you make changes for the future.
Do you remember in grad school when they told us to never ask a why question?
Yes.
Don't you feel like half of this podcast is us saying, ask yourself the why?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. And like, well, like,
They're like,
why?
it's judgmental, but like, it works.
But also, I think you ask it in a way of like, well, why did that come up for me? Where's that coming from?
Ooh, good example of responding versus reacting. If I say to you, why the fuck did you do that?
Right.
Reaction, saying to yourself, wow, that was really interesting that I used that behavior and activity. I wonder why I did that. Very different things.
So, what you're speaking to, you bring up a really good point is, we're talking about responding versus reacting towards other people. What about responding versus reacting towards yourself?
Ooh,
Because that's really important to think about too. Like, how much are you quickly reacting towards yourself? It's wild. This just brought up a thought for me. When my wallet was stolen on Friday, I was so upset.
yeah.
It's something that's so out of your control. You just feel so unsafe.
They're violated.
Yeah, you feel violated, you feel unsafe, like when something like that happens. I so quickly went into self-blame. Like, I was like, "Well, why did I leave my bag on the chair? Why did I even bring my bag? Like,
Mm,
why did I was just questioning myself so much. There was so much self-blame.
yeah.
Um, because I was reacting. I was reacting to something that felt so out of my control.
Yeah.
I was having such a good night beforehand too, and we had such a stressful week last week. I did not need that on
No,
a
you didn't.
Friday.
It's bad.
Did not need that. I was just reacting so much. And when you feel so out of control of something, it's easy to blame yourself because for some reason, you're like, this is going to give me more control or
Yeah.
protect me in the future. When in reality, it's not getting my wallet back to blame myself.
No. But also in some ways, think about this for any survivor of a violent situation, right? Like the trauma response is to do right, to fight or to flight and all these things. And like there is, I guess we should probably call it a trauma reaction.
Yeah.
Um, because these things just happen. You don't intend to. The first thing you didn't think to do is I should blame myself for this. It's just an automatic response. And so when things are very heightened and very stressful, it's going to be way more difficult to respond and not react. And it brings us into this other amazing question, which is someone said, why is this so hard to do with some people, like my husband, but not others like my best friend? And I think a lot of people could probably relate to that. Why is it so easy to flip out on your spouse? And one of the things is that our adaptive child is more comfortable coming out in our marriage. We are more reactive towards them. And a good question to ask is, why are we more comfortable hurting our spouses than we are our best friends?
Mm,
Because often that's what it is, right? But it's also our adaptive child gets to come free with those people. And typically we tame that shit down a little bit in our platonic relationships. Like
yes.
you and I have never screamed at each other, but how often have you screamed with your husband?
Oh my God. Well, we just talked about the other day on when we were I was driving, I was on the phone with Emily and we were talking about like if we lived together, we would murder each other.
Oh my God. We said that's one of the reasons why our marriage works, you and me, is because we don't
Yes.
live together and we don't have
Yes.
to compromise together so much.
And there's so many expectations that come with
Yes.
living with one another.
Yes.
So that's another piece of it, right? Like your romantic relationship is the thing that is going to trigger you the most. It's the thing that's going to bring that out of you. You have expectations of that person, right? Like the attachment, your attachment wounds that you had from
Yeah.
childhood with your parents, like they play out in your romantic relationships. They also play out in your friendships, but not as strongly as they will in your romantic relationships.
Yeah.
Your romantic partners will trigger them, activate them the most. And so you are going to be more reactive towards your partner.
Well, I think also, we had our wonderful friend Liz Earnshaw on a few months ago, and she did this great episode. We talked about stress and relationships, and I think stress adds in, and I can feel that, right? Like, there's so many days I'm such a good mom, and that I say that I respond, and then I'm calm, that I'm at her level, and then when stress is really high, I am not my favorite part of myself, right? Like when I say the thing or get upset or like say like we have to get out of here right now or we're going to be late or we start doing this stuff that's then anxiety producing for her, my stress level affects everyone else in the house. His stress level affects everyone else in the house. And you could see it on the dogs.
Yes.
If you and Bill fight, what does Louis do?
He like comes to comfort me.
The dogs, right? So ours go two different ways. Dolly Parton is like, what is happening? Blah, 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 blah. And then Murphy, our big feeler, he will either sit next to us and try to paw to get us to stop, or he goes and sits in the corner and looks like, oh, I did this. And that's kind of what it's like when you fight in front of your kids, too.
Yeah.
Did I cause this? Even my pets feel it. And so stress goes into all these things. So when shit is really stressful, when it's been a very long day, how we communicate with our partner, it's going to change.
Pets are amazing. I like anytime I am like, crying from a TV show or anything, right? Like a sad commercial will come on and I'll start crying. Louis looks directly at me immediately. As soon, like the first sniffle, he is staring at me.
So then does he comfort you or he just judges you?
It's hard to say. Like one thing, I think maybe that's another thing I would tell him is like, I'm fine, Louis. You don't have to take care of me.
All is good.
All is good.
Somebody wrote in how to start noticing I'm active before I say something mean in the moment.
Mm.
So when things are going 0 to 60, it's going to be way harder to catch the bullet, right? So there's a saying from EFT, Dr. Sue Johnson, of catch the bullets. How do I stop it before it goes? And when I'm throwing bullets out, it's real hard to slow it down. So the question is, and we love our great acronym of WAIT. Why am I talking? A really great thing to do is if I keep over talking, whether that's in a fawning or aggressive way, then maybe stop yourself. Do I need to say the next few sentences I'm going to say?
Yes.
I always say to everyone, when you're like texting a fight, in a text fight, never send the last text.
Yeah.
Whatever the last one is, it's unnecessary.
Unnecessary.
You can't say 3 sentences. Then you're going into personals, you're going into attacks, you're going, into all those things, contempt.
Another thing that I think can be really helpful is like saying out loud that you are feeling reactive. Like for you to like call out the situation, for you to be able to say like, I am going to say something that I don't want to say. And so I need to step away.
Yeah.
Can be really helpful for you to just say, I think that I was looking for another question because it made me think of that too. I don't know where it is. Maybe I'll come across it. But just for you to out loud be like, hey, I am feeling really reactive. I think someone said something about shutting down. Like, hey, I'm shutting
Yes.
down right now. Where is that?
Someone said how to respond clearly when your body is beginning to shut down. Is that the question you're looking for?
Yes, I think yeah, it's either that or yes, exactly. Um, so for you to say out loud, I'm shutting down right now, like I need to step away to regulate myself, or like I'm about to say something mean and I don't want to hurt this relationship, or like I'm about to be really reactive and I don't want to hurt this relationship, like call it out.
Mm.
For you to call it out can be really helpful. Then your partner knows. And you can even talk about this when you're not in a fight. I actually would recommend that for you to have this conversation of like, listen, when we're fighting, I tend to be really reactive. I tend to say things that like are hurtful. And I understand that. Um, because I understand how that has hurt our relationship in the past. When that's about to happen, I'm going to let you know so that I can step away, regulate, and then we can maybe come back to the conversation.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like talk about the process of how you fight when you're not fighting so that your partner can be aware of like what's going on. Because if you're someone who says really mean things when you're reacting and you keep having to go back and apologize for them and say, I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. Then you're going to have to put some like a safety plan in place when you feel that coming up. And the safety plan can be you saying out loud, I am about to do this again.
This is me. I have to have a safety plan,
Yeah.
right? Like
What
I totally do, man.
what's your safety plan?
My safety plan is walk the fuck away. My
Yeah.
safety plan in our house is like, I have to walk away
Yeah.
if I keep going. And that's actually been something that's hard for my husband to adjust to, is that used to make him really uncomfortable with me walking away. And then he would want to come after me.
Yeah.
And I'm
That's
like,
not
no, don't follow me. And that's the thing, is if you're also, people don't realize that that's also a reaction to then chase the other person down
yes.
because you're uncomfortable in your own discomfort and you can't tolerate that. But if somebody has to walk away and chill out, you gotta let them do that.
Someone said it's a perfect segue into this question. How to not let anxiety take over?
Uh,
Because in that example, and this is very common in relationships, right? Where like someone will need space, they will need to walk away. The one person, the other partner is reactive to that,
mhm.
right? Like they want to fix it now. They're like, I want this to be done. I want to fix it. I don't want to have to. Um, and so they are looking for the other partner to like come to them and to solve it in order to manage their own anxiety.
Yeah.
And so in that moment, instead of looking for your partner to manage your anxiety, it's going to be your job to regulate your own anxiety. So
Mhm.
so if you're a partner who is yelling, name calling and needs to step away, you need to manage or regulate your own emotions so that you don't do that. And if you're the partner who's anxious and needs to fix it now, you need to step away and figure out how to regulate your own emotions so that you don't need your partner to like quell that feeling for you.
Yeah. And sometimes it's not even in, okay, I want to give an example of something else, right? So sometimes it's not even um in a relationship or like in a conversation. So last week I was at the hairdresser. Going to the hairdresser is very difficult for me because I am not really good at sitting for a long period. I'm like, I must move and walk around. And like, you can't really do that at the hairdresser, right? Like, so you're sitting there. So it's like already sort of activating. And a ton of people, there was a lot of conversation around weight loss. And when people talk about weight loss, they're not trying to hurt someone else. They're not trying to trigger or activate someone else. But sometimes it can be triggering and activating for you just to be around that conversation. And so I start like totally fucking shutting down. And right, there is a situation that I'm not even part of the conversation. But all of a sudden, my reaction is like, dun, dun, dun. And And it's like then hard to like come out of that, right? So the other thing to keep in mind is that if you have a reaction that's shut down, it's often not so easy to walk back out of that shutdown. Like
Yeah.
once you are shut down, it's not just like, okay, well, I left the salon and like still couldn't get out of it. And it like, I mean, I called you and I was like a mess.
Yeah.
And I think we have this idea that it's like, well, it's over. The reality is the stress response cycle still has to fully complete itself for us to like get out of it.
Mhm.
It's
I wonder if because your coping mechanisms are to like move around or to get away or to,
You can't do that. Yeah.
and that was not available to you.
Well, and I think about that even like for kids in high school, right? Like, remember in high school, you like sit at a fucking desk
Yes.
and you could be like also like in high school, remember where like there was times where you're like, after the bathroom, like, no, and you're like, wait, what?
Yeah. Wait, what? I don't understand. You know, it's
I
funny.
can't fucking piss. Like, I don't understand. And so, like, I think about that so much about like folks that have, or people that are teachers and can't leave their classroom, or folks that have these 9 to 5s that can't get out of their desk. Like, that is so difficult when we feel stuck somewhere because it's also just as fucking triggering.
Yes. You know, it's funny. It made me think like when I was in school and I wouldn't be able to leave my desk, I would fall asleep.
That was your reaction. Like, your body was like, I'm gonna literally shut down.
And it wasn't until like this moment that I like kind of realized that that's probably what was happening,
Yeah.
that I was shutting down so much that I would just fall asleep because I couldn't do anything else.
You know what's funny is I've noticed this with my daughter with babysitters. Anytime we have a babysitter, she goes to sleep in like 5 seconds.
Wow.
And this chick is not easy to put to sleep. Like, I am telling you, like, our nighttime routine takes a long, long, exhausting time. But when there's a babysitter there, I notice, and like, so one, yeah, she probably is like, they're usually better behaved with someone that's not you. But I also think that she has a discomfort and she's not as comfortable. So she just puts herself to sleep.
Yeah, like anytime I was overstimulated, like at a wedding, or I would just pass out. Like I would just school anywhere. And you know, you don't typically associate that with like someone who has ADD.
Yeah.
But it was like when I was overstimulated, that's what would happen to me.
My
Like, cause you
husband does that.
am I
I've never made that
giving you
connection.
giving you some information?
You're giving me some information.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. All right. All right. Okay.
We were also saying that me and Emily's husband are the same. And
Yeah.
Emily and my husband are
Oh,
the same.
I am your husband.
Just
I am
funny
like him and I am. The thing is that like I don't have to live with you. So I'm just like,
Yes.
oh my God, this is so amazing. With my husband, I'm like, oh my God. Um,
It's
okay.
incredible.
How do you sit with a younger part of yourself that is reacting and keeps reacting? I love this question.
Oh my God. Um, here's what I would say. Ask that younger part of yourself, what do you need right now?
Mm.
What do you need in order to cope with this feeling? Give yourself the things that you needed as a child that adults in your life were maybe unable to give you. And because that younger part of yourself is asking for something, whether that's validation, whether it's comfort, whether it's permission to just let yourself fall apart. I would just ask your younger self questions about, where's this coming from for you? What do you need right now? What did you need growing up that you didn't receive from adults in your life?
Yeah. How to not, this is a really interesting one. How to not absorb other people's energy during tense moments. So for me, I have to let go of other people's energy by movement, right? And that does not mean that I have to be walking around, but like I sometimes have to like pretend like I'm wiping stuff off my legs. Like sometimes I have to like really separate. And then I have to say, like, their shit is not my shit. Because like anxiety and reactions, it's super contagious. And we've known this because you and I can do this to each other.
Yes.
What was it? Wait, where were we? Oh, last night we were like at that presentation. What the fuck were we talking about? I was like, this is what we do to each other.
Yeah. And we know that.
Yes, right. You like rev each other up, and like we've had this. Remember that time we're at your parents' house, and I think we were back when we used to like record in person,
Yeah.
and we were at their house. We were gonna record the whole next day, and the night before, and I don't know what we were going through, something hard, and I was like, I think we're being whiny bitches, sort of. Like I don't remember what was going on, but we were being like slightly victimy in the way we were talking about it.
Yeah.
And so, like, you can rev each other up. This is one of the problems when there's a lot of triangulation going on, or you're gossiping, or you're in a group of friends, people just rev each other up. And then you're like, oh, all of a sudden I'm mad at this person I don't even have an issue with because they were mad at, they were rude to Susie Joe. And you have to say to yourself, like, okay, that's Susie Joe shit, not my shit.
I also think there's this, there's a line between like validating a friend or like your partner. Um, and like, how do I also create like an emotional boundary of like, is this actually helpful for them? Right. Like, it's really easy for me specifically to like get in the weeds with someone if they're upset about something because I'm like,
Yeah.
yeah, that is fucked up. You know what I mean? Like, because you get so protective of your friends and you want them to, and as opposed to being like, yeah, like I hear you, like, let's talk about like other solutions
Mhm.
but I think it also depends on like where that person is at, right? And you can ask them, like, do you want, me to listen? Like, where are you right now? You can kind of feel it out. Um, but, we did a whole episode on emotional boundaries and we talk a lot about how, when a partner's really upset about something, how to create emotional boundaries for yourself. Emily talks about how she needs to like take a walk. Um, and like say to herself, like, this is not mine.
Yeah.
That is something I do is I will say to myself, like, this is not mine to take on, right?
Mhm.
Like they're going through something and what can I do to be supportive, but not be pulled in the weeds with them? I have to very consciously say that to myself because if I don't, then I subconsciously get pulled into it,
Yeah.
right? When you care about someone, it's very easy to get pulled into it. You don't want them to be upset. You don't want them to be stressed. And my husband gets like this with me. Like if I'm stressed about something, he
Yeah.
starts getting stressed. Like he'll take all my stress. And I will say to
Yo, I
him,
hate that.
I know,
That I get so upset when that happens. I'm like,
I
"This
know.
isn't about you."
Yes. So I have to like teach him in that moment, like, you don't have to get upset about this. I am upset right now. Like, here's what I need.
Yeah.
And anytime he does the thing that I need, I like reinforce the shit out of it.
Yeah.
Like I forget, honestly forget what happened, but the way he like talked me through it, I was like, that was exactly what I needed. And like, if you could keep doing that every time I'm stressed, I think I was stressed about money, which like big shocker.
Shocking.
Shocker of the century. He was kind of being like very supportive and helping me through it. And I was like, that is what I need when I'm
Yeah.
stressed. Like that thing right there. So anytime it does happen, reinforce it. Anytime it doesn't happen, it's a teaching moment. I know that's not always easy when you're in the thick of your stress, but you can use it as a teaching moment. And the only way to use it as a teaching moment is to also know what you need in that moment. What would be helpful for your partner to do in that moment?
Yeah. So, okay, so before we move on to Dear Imogen,
Yeah.
let's just say there isn't a perfect thing to respond, not react. And here's the annoying part we say every time, which is this is when you need to know yourself. So for me, I can feel that I start to talk faster. I start to feel like warmer in my body. I start to feel my chest gets a little tighter and my hands feel like I need to move them. For me, that's how I know activation. Jen might be completely different. You have to understand your own. And when you do that, you have to say to yourself, is this the time I need to use my voice? Is this the time I need to walk away? And responding versus reacting is speaking up, being brave. It is not blaming. It is not coercive. It is not manipulation, right? It is not personal. And you start to develop that, but you're not always going to do it perfectly. And you need to also not react to yourself and learn from each thing. All right.
Beautiful.
Dear Em and Jen.
You want me to do it?
Yeah, I love that.
Dear Em and Jen, I grew up in a dysfunctional family, which included alcohol use and an emotionally immature parent. When my husband and I started dating many years ago, I spent more time with him and his family than he did with mine. Because of this, my husband did not really get the chance to know them and vice versa. My parents did not approve of him for a while, but now that we are getting married, they would like him to be around more. I've worked on my boundaries with the help of therapy and my husband. My previous therapist told me that his relationship with my parents is his own. and he has the choice whether to be around them or not. My husband will only agree to spend major holidays and some birthdays with my family. For reference, they live about 10 minutes away. I see my parents a few times a month on my own. We spend a lot more time with my husband's family, which is okay, but causes problems between my mom and I. She wants us to spend just as much time with her. This is especially coming up because we are expecting our first child. I don't know how to compromise with my husband while also not being manipulated by my mom's feelings and disrupt my own boundaries. I'm a people pleaser and just want everyone to be happy. Unfortunately, it seems I have to always upset someone, which ultimately upsets me. I guess my question is my husband being unreasonable? Should he compromise his own boundaries with my family so I am not the one getting hurt? I would like him around more, but I understand that my family can be tough to be around. Any advice is appreciated. Thank you both for everything you do.
I think your response and my response would be two very different things.
You go first.
I disagree with the first therapist. Marriage is being around your partner's shitty fucking family. I mean, if there's, I wish it was different. That does not mean, now, if you were seeing your family every single fucking day, I'd be like, yeah, that's too much. But wanting your partner to come to something every few months or wanting to become once a month or for a lunch and not stay for an extended period of time, I think that's a reasonable thing to want in a relationship because it isn't you and him separately, it's you and him together. Now, if there was something very, very, very uncomfortable that your husband was feeling, experiencing, of course you should take that into consideration always. But also, is he just like, not for me, not interested, right? Like, but it's important to you. And so I think one, the conversation is between you and your partner always, right? Like, what's happening here? Why do you want it this way? Why do I want it this way? And you're right. You have to separate for yourself what it is that you want versus your mom's manipulation and that pressure from your mom. And that might be hard to do with influence from your mom. And it actually might be clearer after a conversation with your partner. But I think you have to say, what do I really want out of the relationship from my family and the importance of my partner? My husband's always like, I want you to be there, right? Like, in my like, and he's like, and I love my husband, so I'm going to do things for him because that's compromising in a relationship. Um, and so, do I feel like your husband's being unreasonable? I don't think it's necessarily unreasonable. I think it's just kind of convenient and works out, right? Like, he kind of got the better end of the stick here, I would say. I would also like to be him. Um, but I think you have to figure out what it is that you want versus what other people want from you.
That was going to be my exact answer, in the sense of like, this person, wonderful person, is saying that they're a people pleaser. And if you've been a people pleaser your whole life, it might be really hard to figure out what you even
Yeah.
want. And if you're getting it from both, right? If you have, a mom who is being, like really intense about what she wants, and your husband's being really intense about what he wants, and you feel very stuck in the middle, which is common and it happens. I want you to really sit down separately on your own and think about, like, well, what do I want in my relationship? How, often am I looking for my partner to join me in seeing my parents? Is that reasonable? Is that something that we can work into our relationship? Because I just wonder how much of your own voice you're able to hear amongst the really loud noise on
Yeah.
both ends.
She said, do you think my husband's being unreasonable?
Right.
That was her question. What's your answer?
I think you have to decide that.
Oh God, such a therapist, Jen.
I mean, what am I, like, I don't fucking know. It depends on what you care about. You know what
Yeah,
I mean?
right?
Like, it
Yes.
depends on what's important to you.
Yeah.
So I think that's, and I think the reason why you might be asking us is because you're so used to
Yeah.
hearing other people's opinions about what is right and what is wrong. And so what I'm going to encourage for you is to figure out for yourself what feels right for you. And that might take time, and that might be present in all areas of your life. So I want you to sit really quietly. I know that you are probably so used to looking to other people to say, what should I do here? What should I do here? But you have a voice inside you that, you know, is speaking to your values. It's speaking to what you want in your life. Um, and so that's what I would say is get really quiet with yourself and really ask yourself some of those questions, because what is right for you might be very different than what's right for me or what's right for Emmalee or what's right for your mom or what's right for your husband. But what matters is being able to figure out what's right for you and then talk to your husband about it and find some sort of compromise and work
Yeah,
through it that way.
I love it.
Thank you so much for tuning in to today's episode of Shrink Chicks.
We'll see you back here next week for another session.
In the meantime, if you want a question answered or a topic discussed, follow us on Instagram at ShrinkChicks. And if you're looking to get connected with a therapist like us to start or continue your therapeutic journey, visit thetherapygroup.com. Just fill out a contact form on our website, and we will personally match you with one of our amazing therapists. And for all of our therapists and group practice owners out there, we also offer group practice consulting.
And if you're looking to support yourself further and support our show, check out our amazing merch options at shrinkchicks.com/merch and our Know Yourself, Grow Yourself journal on Amazon. Also, if you'd be so kind, we'd love a rating review and for you to share with a friend or an enemy or a mother-in-law, honestly, whoever needs it, so that we can keep reaching more people on our mission to bring mental health topics to your ears every week.
Thanks for being here with us. And don't forget to grow yourself. You got to know yourself.